Hey folks, welcome to Doc Talk. Dr. Dan Thompson here from Kansas State University, and my guest today is going to be Dr. Mike Apley, and we're going to go and talk about Antibiotics 101. If you had questions about how antibiotics work and how we make different choices in the history of antibiotics, well, you stay tuned, enjoy the show, and listen to what Dr. Apley has to say.
Closed captioning brought to you by Kansas Soybean Commission. The Soybean Checkoff, Progress, powered by Kansas farmers. Doc Talk, brought to you by Brown Chevrolet Buick. In Wamego, just a short drive down the yellow brick road.
Hey folks, welcome to Doc Talk. Dr. Dan Thompson here at Kansas State University with my good friend and colleague, Dr. Mike Apley, who is a professor here at the College of Veterinary Medicine at Kansas State University. We've had shows where we've talked about antibiotics, about judicious use, and working with your veterinarian. But one of the things we need to every once in a while back up to is, what are these things? And so what are antibiotics? And kind of give us some of the history of these things, Mike.
Well, antibiotics have always been here for a lot of us. We've just always known them and had the option to use them. Actually, our first real antibiotic discovery was, we used the arsenicals back at the turn of the century, starting around the early 1900s, but they had a lot of side effects. In 1928, Sir Alexander Fleming went to a vacation, and he put some petri dishes with Staph aureus growing in them and disinfectant, so they be killed off while he was gone, but some of them didn't get under the disinfectant. And he was actually discovering the activity of the arsenicals on the staph. Well, they came back from vacation, and lo and behold, some of them hadn't been submerged, and there were spots where the staph hadn't grown and had been killed off. And it was from spores blowing in the window and landing there, and that mold produced the penicillin. He isolated the penicillin, and it was almost a curiosity for a while. They published a lot on it. And it was in the late 30s that Florey and Chain down in Australia figured out how to mass produce in large quantities. And then the first use of penicillin outside the military, remember this was right before World War II when it went to mass production, and then the U.S. geared up to produce it primarily for military use, was 1942, the Tropicana nightclub fire in Boston, Massachusetts. A lot of burn victims and staph is a real problem. So they used it on them, and was taken to the hospital. Actually, the penicillin was in a military convoy because it was classified as really a military secret. So that was 1942, the first widespread use. We had sulfas before them. They were discovered really in 1935, and that brings up the difference between an antibiotic and an antimicrobial. Penicillin's an antibiotic because it's produced by one organism and inhibits the growth of another. Sulfas are a totally synthetic. The first one was a dye that they tested in rabbits and found the antimicrobial activity in there. So it's completely synthetic. And so it's an antimicrobial, which includes the antibiotics. So we have listeners out there who were alive when their only option was a sulfa, and maybe a few that there wasn't really even a sulfa available when they were very young and had an infection. So our antibiotic era is really a lifespan long, that we've really truly had effective antibiotics to use.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine when you look at all the different classes and compounds that we've developed since then. But now that bottle has come to a neck and narrowed where we're not producing or discovering a lot more antibiotic classes or compounds.
The last two novel classes, completely new chemistry, were 2000 and 2003, and that was for human. Before that, it was like 1978 when the fluoroquinolones were first released. So 50s, 60s through the 70s, it was like we have beaten infectious disease. We've conquered it. We're now realizing that that's not true, and we're going to have to look at some completely novel mechanisms of action against bacteria to advance more options in the future.
Cool. We're going to take a break, folks. When we come back, more on antibiotics with Dr. Mike Apley.
This hog is Hanover hoof for meal made from U.S. soybeans. Now, one hog isn't that impressive, but Suppose we add another, and another, and another. Before long, you've got billions of hungry customers around the world all clamoring for the same thing. Our soybeans. Learn more about the billion-dollar appetite of animal agriculture at BeyondTheElevator.com. Brought to you by America's soybean farmers and their checkoff.
Turn to a Central National Bank Ag Professional. You'll be in good company. They'll help you track expense lines, manage variable input costs, assess ground agreements, pick a crop protection plan. These times demand ag professionals. Central National Bank. You could profit from what they know. Ag operations run better on Central Time.
Central National Bank. Money for life.
Member FDIC in your hometown since 1884.
Doc Talk, brought to you by Santa Fe Trail Meats in Overbrook, or visit us online at sftmeats.com.
Hey folks, welcome back to Doc Talk. Dr. Dan Thompson and Dr. Mike Apley for Kansas State University College of Veterinary Medicine, where Dr. Apley is a professor and a clinical pharmacologist here at the veterinary school. He teaches students about antibiotics, about other drugs, other compounds, and he works a lot within agriculture and does a lot of service for agriculture, whether it's on a national or international level. When we talk about antibiotics and keeping the technology available for us on the farm and ranch, and let's get into some of these about how these antibiotics work, because it's amazing to me. We put it in the animal and they go find the bacteria, or the bacteria find it, or they run into each other, or whatever. But what are some of the things that we do that differentiate antibiotics?
Well, the antibiotics are different by their chemical structure. So when we talk about the macrolides or the penicillins or the cephalosporins or the tetracyclines, it's a group that's very chemically similar, and then they differ by different groups hung on there that give different activities. Or, for example, the fluoroquinolones, it recognize adenofloxacin or enrofloxacin.
Batril or Addison.
Yeah. And those, the very first ones, really didn't have that good of pharmacokinetics. As far as how they moved in the body, they had some side effects, and then they kept working with them and adding a group here or subtracting one here to get to the ones we have today, which are really quite effective, and that's true for all the groups. So the groups, when we talk about them as groups, are chemically similar, and they have different ways of acting. A lot of them work by binding to the part of the bacterial cell that produces proteins and knocking out its ability to produce proteins. Others work by working directly on the DNA, and bacteria have DNA just like we do. And again, the example of the fluoroquinolones, they work by sabotaging the splitting and replication of the DNA. The sulfas, one of the first ones, they work by actually inhibiting the bacteria's ability to produce folic acid.
So when you get into this, one of the things that we always talk about are static or cidal. These are either bacteriostatic or bactericidal. What's the difference between static and cidal antibiotics?
There's two ways we do it in the lab. Okay. One is by how far apart the concentration is it takes to just inhibit growth. So if you take the antibiotic away, it will regrow. How far that concentration is for how much it takes to completely sterilize the culture. The other one is how fast it kills. Okay. So it's not a black or white, it's being separated by so many magnitudes.
But in general, the difference between a static drug and a cidal drug would be?
One slows growth and the immune system comes in and cleans them up. The other one tends to kill, the bactericidal tends to kill more, and then the immune system still has to come in and clean up the mess. But both statics and cidal can work. And there are a lot of things that make up how an antibiotic works. Static versus cidal is one of many. So it's something to be aware of, but it's not the end all on one drug being better or worse than the other.
Right. It's just a difference in the mechanism. When we come back, I want to talk some about the long-acting, some of the differences in oral and injectables, and just how these antibiotics differ and do their job. Thanks for being here. Thanks for watching Doc Talk. More after these messages.
The BQA Tip of the Day, sponsored by Beringer Engelheim Vetmedica Inc.
Hello folks, I'm Dr. Nels Lindberg with Animal Medical Center and Production Animal Consultation. Today's BQA Tip of the Day has to do with good quality cattle handling, low stress cattle handling, and good quality horsemanship. These are some new cattle here, and when we get new cattle in, we want to focus on several things. We want to focus on cattle acclimation and producing good cattle health. We often want to focus on the drugs and the shots that we can give to produce cattle health, but what we're doing here is more important than those things. We want to acclimate these cattle, spend time in the pen with these cattle each and every day, focusing on individuals, but also the pen as a whole, creating good, positive cattle movement using pressure and release techniques, also doing things like exercise with these cattle. We want to kick them out of the pen, we can take them down the alley, bring them back. We want to just give them something else to think about, stimulate a cough, stimulate positive health. That's our end goal. Thank you.
Tallgrass Commodities offers producers bulk commodities at a reasonable price with reliable service throughout the whole Midwest. To find out more about Tallgrass Commodities, visit tallgrass.us or call 785-494-8484.
The Kansas Wheat Innovation Center in Manhattan is rediscovering ways to get improved varieties and new genetics in the hands of farmers faster. Grower-led and checkoff-funded research initiatives are bringing about positive change. This grassroots leadership provides a strong voice in Topeka and Washington, D.C. Now is the time to partner with Kansas Wheat in moving wheat forward. Kansas Wheat Commission and Kansas Association of Wheat Growers. Farmers investing in their future and yours. Log on to rediscoverwheat.org.
Buying a car shouldn't be this hard. And at Brown Chevrolet Buick in Wamego, it isn't. It's actually awesome. Whether you want a new or used car or truck, Toby's team can make the deal. Even if you want to custom order a new car or truck, Toby's team can make the deal. See Toby's team at Brown Chevrolet Buick in Wamego. We're awesome.
This is the fast track to more jobs and America's energy independence. Advanced performance is here now. Biodiesel, America's advanced biofuel.
Soil is the life of a farm, and for 25 years, SureCrop Liquid Crop Nutrition has helped growers produce abundant quality crops while preserving and improving the soils they steward. SureCrop offers complete soil and plant analysis with cropping recommendations, delivery direct to your on-farm storage, and quality crop nutrition custom blended for your field. Choose SureCrop for the assurance of excellence for your soil. Call today or visit their website for more information.
No matter where, no matter why, the Veterinary Health Center at Kansas State University is committed to providing quality patient care to animals and exceptional customer service to their owners. From routine checkups to emergency and specialty care, our world-renowned specialists and experienced professionals are here to discover, to teach, and to heal.
Let us know.
How can I help? How can we help?
Valley Vet Supply is devoted to providing information and professional quality products at reasonable prices.
Valley Vet Supply.
Doc Talk, brought to you by the Kansas Soybean Commission. The Soybean Checkoff, progress powered by Kansas farmers.
Hey folks, welcome back to Doc Talk. Dr. Dan Thompson here with Dr. Mike Apley. Dr. Apley is a clinical pharmacologist here at the Kansas State University College of Veterinary Medicine and serves all the agricultural food animal industries in protecting this technology we call antibiotics and working with these industries to help support judicious use of antimicrobials. And we talked about static versus cidal, slowing growth versus killing, which both of them are effective. But what about the long-acting antibiotics? What does that mean?
Frankly, I've gone to the single injection term because it helps me understand better, but long-acting means after one injection you have a longer duration during which you can measure drug concentrations in the body. And in the last 10 to 15 years, we've had a real advancement in helping us understand exactly what those concentrations mean. Some of them are very meaningful, some of them aren't. But I really go to single injection, where you can give one single injection,
right,
and that will see you through for a certain time period when you make the decision on whether or not that animal is recovered or whether it needs more therapy. And that's one of the key critical things we've talked about before that a producer needs to do with their veterinarian, is clearly understand how long after the administration of that antibiotic that decision needs to be made of, yeah, it helped them get better or it didn't. And the reason I use single injection is we have some antibiotics that will work against the disease with a single injection that are actually almost unmeasurable in 48 hours. And we have some...
You mean in the body?
In the body, yeah.
Right,
in the
they're
body.
cleared in the body.
They're cleared,
Yeah.
at least therapeutic concentrations.
Right,
There may
right.
be some residues. And we have some that work by single injection that you can measure concentrations out as long as 10 to 12 days.
Now, part of that is because they have different mechanisms of action, the duration versus concentration dependent.
Right. And some of these drugs work best by one big high hit and then they can leave, and some require a constant steady pressure on the bacteria and they need to be there a while. And it's the way, based on how they interact with the bacteria and the target. That's what I still, when I go out in the field, I'm still thinking single injection or we need multiple. And all that science rolls into whether you can give it once or you need to give it multiple times. But regardless of the mechanism for being able to give it once, again, knowing when to say yes, they need more or they don't need more is the absolute critical thing for our listeners to understand.
Yeah, and that's understanding and working with your veterinarian to understand how long the antibiotic, if you use an antibiotic that's on board in the animal at a therapeutic dose for 48 hours, you need to wait 48 hours before you introduce another compound. And if it's on board for 7 days, you need to know that giving an antibiotic at 4 days
right
is could be harmful if the wrong compound's used at the time that you're using one of these long-acting antibiotics.
Because some of them don't like each other very much.
Right, and that gets back to our cytostatic, and mixing those types of drugs together. And so working with your veterinarian to understand that sometimes you can do harm.
Being inventive isn't always good.
Right. Well, we're going to take a break. When we come back from this message, we're going to wrap up with Dr. Apley talking about Antibiotics 101, and I'm sure we're going to have him back for a revamp on the course. Stay tuned.
This Meet the Future Veterinarian is brought to you by Zuprevo. Choose confidence. Choose Zuprevo for BRD treatment. Todd Windsor, a student in the College of Veterinary Medicine at Washington State University, was recently awarded an AmStut scholarship. Todd is from North Central Washington, and he and his wife have one child. With a background in beef cattle, his goal after graduation is to work primarily with cow-calf producers anywhere his career takes him. Valley Vet Supply is devoted to providing information and professional quality products at reasonable prices.
Tar Waters has what you need for all seasons for around the farm and home. Working, hunting, growing, feeding, snow removal, even fun for the kids. And a service department with experienced techs to help keep your equipment in top running condition. Tar Waters has a huge selection and the best prices. Tar Water Farm and Home, family owned and operated since 1978. They have what you need.
American innovation is being driven in places you might not expect by people like Brent Hayek, an Oklahoma family farmer, who recently set a world land speed record in a Ford Super Duty pickup truck powered by renewable B20 biodiesel. Advanced performance is here, now, putting America on the fast track to more jobs and energy independence. Biodiesel, America's advanced biofuel.
Hello friends, I'm Ernie Rodina.
And I'm Dawn Dawson with the Better Horses Radio Show.
For over 9 years, we've been bringing the Better Horses Radio Show to markets all across the Midwest. We talk about God, lots about horses.
We talk about cows, we talk about horse health, we talk to top trainers, and we even talk about Roy Rogers.
We are having a blast with Better Horses Radio Show and would love to take it to a market near you.
So visit our website at betterhorsesradio.com and let us or your local radio station know you'd like to hear it in your area.
The Better Horses Radio Show is unbelievable.
When your living depends on agriculture, you can depend on KFRM 550 AM. If you're in the southwest three-fourths of Kansas or the northern half of Oklahoma, catch us at 550 AM on the radio dial. But if that isn't you, listen on your cell phone at TuneIn Radio or on your computer at KFRM.com. We promise to keep you informed, entertained, and company as you go through your day. KFRM 550 AM, the voice of the plains. We would like to join your management team.
This segment is brought to you by Tarwater Farm and Home. Come on by, we'll treat you like family.
Hey folks, welcome back to Doc Talk. Dr. Dan Thompson and Dr. Mike Apley here from Kansas State University's College of Veterinary Medicine. And Dr. Apley is a professor in clinical pharmacology, and we're talking about antibiotics. And Mike, we talked about static versus sidle antibiotics. We've talked about concentration-dependent versus duration-dependent antibiotics. So really two important decisions that veterinarians have to make when they're helping make the decision on which drugs to use. But you know, some of the things, oral versus injectable and spectrum of activity, are two things I have circled that you know, just walk me through a little bit on the difference between the oral versus injectable.
Yeah, a great example there, the tetracyclines. So everyone listening who works with cattle or hogs understands there's injectable and there's oral versions. And in cattle, if you look at the dose for a long-acting oxytetracycline injection, it's 9 milligrams per pound. Some have 13.5 milligrams per pound that's given once. Then you look at the oral feed administration form, and it's 10 milligrams per pound per day. And you go, wow, well, so they're the same. Well, they're not, because the oral bioavailability of the tetracyclines is really very low. So given 10 milligrams per pound per day in the feed is nowhere near reaching the same concentrations in the animal as given 9 milligrams per pound once that goes over 3 days, or the 13.5, which goes a little longer, because the concentration in their blood from the oral at roughly the same dose is about 1/6 to 1/8 the concentration that would be obtained by injecting it. So it's not the same. It's very different. So now, especially as veterinarians are going to be required to authorize that feed use, rather as now it being over the counter, that's one of the considerations the veterinarian is going to make is, okay, is it appropriate to use this, which is going to result in much lower systemic concentrations, or do we need to inject with another tetracycline? So the oral is the same dose given orally isn't necessarily the same drug reaching the animal as given systemically.
And with some of the oral products too. I mean, I use the oral products quite a bit, but you know, sick animals don't eat.
Right.
And so that's the other consideration, and now you're working with animal behavior and so many other things. And a lot of times, if I know that the calf is on the end of the needle,
yeah,
I know they got it, but I got to catch them too.
Well, and don't take us wrong, as in saying that oral tetracyclines aren't effective for some diseases, and especially controlling clinical anaplasmosis. Those out there have herds with anaplasmosis challenges starting in August through probably a month after vector season. We're going to have to do something to control clinical disease, and very low doses of that oral tetracycline is just enough to keep that anaplasma organism from running off and being really harmful to cows and bulls.
Well, thanks for being on the show today.
Thank you.
It's always great to have Dr. Apley here. Remember, work with your local veterinarian to develop your antimicrobial stewardship program and your program for your herd and treatment. If you want to know more about what we do here at K-State, you can find us on the web at www.vet.ksu.edu. I'm Dr. Dan Thompson. You've been watching Doc Talk today. Thank you very much for joining us, and I'll see you down the road.
Closed captioning brought to you by Kansas Soybean Commission. The Soybean Checkoff. Progress, powered by Kansas farmers.